So we've been tracking the number of coronavirus cases and all the metrics there with great concern. And one of the bright spots, Saagar, as we've been seeing these new hotspots in the Sun Belt in Florida, Arizona, Texas, California, and more. One of the bright spots is that the death toll had not really been ticking up. So even as you were having record-breaking numbers of new cases in some of these states and nationally, the death toll was staying flat and even declining. That trend seems to have ended. I mean, it's no surprise. You have more infections. We don't have a therapeutic for this thing. More people are going to start to die. And so we are once again reaching close to that 1,000 deaths a day number. So even though it has been more young people who've been suffering from the infection, you know, who are less at risk, we still are starting to see deaths tick up, which is deeply concerning.
Yeah, so California, Florida, and Texas yesterday reported their highest daily coronavirus death total. So that was when the states we were watching very closely because average age of infection there was dramatically lower.
Right.
And so we're ticking up to, I think it was 842 new cases that were reported, 842 new deaths that were reported yesterday. So what the analysis that I've seen on this is not even just the case number, it's called the moving 7-day average of deaths. When the moving 7-day average, you know, basically the last 7 days, what the average is, that number is also beginning to tick up.
Right.
So the higher that number goes, you know, it could be, this is the issue, which is that we just don't know what a bad and the worst scenario looks like. Is it where we are right now? Will we ever get back to New York levels of epidemic? It's actually generally not, you know, it's not a consensus view that it's possible. It's likely to be somewhere in the middle. And I'm not going to downplay that. That's still a disaster.
Right.
But it's 1,500 deaths a day, you know, 100,000 cases a day is something that people are looking at in the coming weeks. It's very much possible because a lot of people are just refusing to either abide by social distancing, wear a mask. And many of these state economies, in a way, you can't even blame them. Like, they're refusing to shut down because the government has not bailed them out. State and local governments did not get bailed out. Their citizens have not been bailed out. Restaurants and all these other people are still suffering. Workers. I mean, what was it yesterday? As of the pandemic began, 50 million out of 160 million workers have filed for unemployment. Like, when you don't help people out, this is what's going to happen, which is that people are just going to go out and live their lives, and especially without a robust strategy to do anything about it. So I'm sad, but honestly, because of just how badly we've handled it, I don't know what the alternative is.
I know, and yet we look at Sweden, which was the, you know, libertarian model. Right. Oh, look, they're not shutting down, which, you know, would be a disaster, so their economy is going to be fine. Well, actually, they had thousands more deaths than their immediate neighbors who did shut down. Crashed. And their economy is just as devastated, right? So as we've said from the beginning here, these two things are not separate. You have to take care of people economically so that they will stay home. You have to stay home to be able to reopen the economy. And so these death numbers are just, you know, another sign of the disastrous handling. Anthony Fauci was on the 538 podcast yesterday talking about where we are with relation to the world. Let's take a listen to that.
But as a country, when you compare us to other countries, I don't think you can say we're doing great. I mean, we're just not, because if you look at the curves of what happened in the European Union, infections went up, they came all the way down to baseline, and then they kind of stayed there, even though as they try to open, there were more cases. In the United States, as a country, with the exceptions of those areas that did well, we came up, we came down, but we plateaued at 20,000 for weeks and weeks and weeks. And now, the last couple of weeks, we've gone back as high as 50,000.
And it's
true.
It also gets characterized as like opening versus shutting.
Yeah.
When we need to be a lot smarter about all of these things. Like people need to actually follow the guidelines. We need to be much more aggressive about mask wearing. And then you can safely reopen parts of the economy. I mean, this is a story on if it's an economic story, it's a health story, and it's a political story because the president's handling of this has been an utter disaster and the American people see it as such. We've got new polling data that shows how poor his approval rating is on all of this, if we can throw that up on the screen. 67% of Americans disapprove of both Trump's coronavirus response and, by the way, his handling of race relations. But if we focus on the coronavirus response here, this is a record level of disapproval for the response. So people are not feeling like, okay, it's getting better, he's getting it under control. No, as cases spike again, of course, they're saying, what are you doing? 2/3 of the country saying that we disapprove of your response. That is really,
There's no
really
sugarcoating
something.
it. It's a complete political disaster. And they refuse to do anything about it. And it's why I've almost washed my hands of the whole thing. I'm like, you people are shooting yourself in the face every single day, and you don't want to do anything about it. You're not going to do anything in terms of the economy. On the coronavirus plan we covered here, people in the White House were just like, yeah, I guess the Americans will just have to live with 100,000 cases a day. Look, that poll says 60% of people think that we're trying to reopen the economy too quickly, overhandling the coronavirus. Listen to the people. Listen to what they want. They want to have the coronavirus case handled. They want money injected into their economy by a government which forced them to shut down. But they refuse to do any of those things. And you know what? You're going to lose if you continue to do it.
And in that same poll, only 15% say it's been too slow, the reopening.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that's they're catering to that 15%.
I know.
It's a
madness.
Tiny sliver of
they're
America
all rich
that
and they
feels
all
that
live
way.
here. They all live in Washington and they all get paid big money by corporations to try and open the economy.
And they're all like populating the airwaves on cable news, on Fox News, and the other outlets that the president loves to watch. So that's exactly what is happening here. And the last thing that I'll say on this is I really don't think that the American people's expectations were outlandish.
No.
It's not like they expected. It's right. It's not like they expected you to have like a magical cure and this all to go away. They just want you to like handle it, to appear like you care and like you're trying to do something about it. That's really all the expectation is, but they just cannot get their arms around this.
It's madness.
More Rising for you after this.